soulmates. Hope the weekend was good. I'm fresh off a homecoming high
you
win.
Are. You got a homecoming glow.
Well, thank you, darling. Big ups to Mel Tucker and the MSU Spartans Black Coach Power.
That's right. That's right. Come on, Black Coach
That's
Power.
It. We are back for another soulful week right here on Fox Soul's Black Report. I'm Courtney Hicks.
And I'm the Cordelide Corte. And this is your open invitation to go beyond the headlines.
That's right.
Sharing our truth in our voice.
All right, you see a lot of pink within the month of October, but let's not forget it's all about purple. October is National Domestic Violence Awareness Month.
That's right. According to the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence, more than 40% of Black women have experienced intimate partner violence.
Now, that also includes intimate partner sexual violence and or intimate partner stalking. So let's chat a little bit about this and its impact on the Black community. So we just mentioned that 40% of Black women have experienced domestic violence in some form. We are now joined by Candy Lewis, Executive Director of Positive Results Center. Good day, Ms. Lewis. Thank you so much for joining us here on Fox Soul's Black Report.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So let's get right into it. Why don't women, Black women, tell that they are in an abusive relationship? I think that's the first thing that comes to mind. Why don't you tell? Why don't you get away? It's more complicated than some may think.
Very much. First off, we don't tell because we are not believed. Far too often, people say things don't happen. We're also victimized. So we'll say things like, you're stupid, you're dumb, why would you stay? So you're already victimizing the victim, and people don't want to hear that. It's also difficult to get the support that they need. Very often we'll get restraining orders, but yet and still that restraining order does not stop that abuser from victimizing the victim.
Yeah.
Those are just a few reasons why they don't stay. In addition to potential.
Sure.
Where are they going to go?
And many times, exactly, and many times children are involved in these, unfortunately, storylines. How important is it to talk and engage children?
It's extremely important. People think that kids, especially little kids, don't know what's going on. First, violence and abuse begins in the womb. If a woman is pregnant and she is being abused, so is that child. And then as that child is being raised in that abusive home, they're learning the behavior. So they will either, in many instances, they will become victims or they will become abusers. And it's not the case in all the cases, but if that woman is being abused, the child is being abused, they're watching the abuse, they're learning the abuse.
Yeah. Ms. Lewis, you have a ebook.
So we have to engage our youth so that we have to engage our youth so they understand that the things that have happened to them is not who they are, but what has happened.
All right, and we're dealing with a little bit of a delay here, so forgive me. Ms. Lewis, you have an ebook entitled What is the Secret, where you give tips to help folks, Black women in particular, navigate through these challenges. Talk about some of the things you discuss in that book.
The ebook is important because women, especially of a certain stature, don't go to domestic violence shelters. They don't go to the resources that are in the community for fear of shame or blame. Then also, it's your victim. How could that possibly be if you're so intelligent, you're polished, and you have this position and stature in the community? And so with the ebook, it gives them all the things that they need. It tells them what violence is, because very often people think that I'm not in an abusive relationship if I'm not hit. But they don't understand that domestic violence looks like you being gaslit or being victimized verbally, emotionally, physically, financially, sexually, and medically. And so it talks about what the signs are, what to do, how to get help, why it's happening, and where to go get the resources so that you can live. And it's important that we understand when a person tells you who they are, like if they say something like, I'm going to kill you, even if they've never hit you, that is their full intent to do so. So make sure that you protect yourself and your family.
Yeah. There is also a national initiative called the Manhood. Can you talk briefly about that? We've got about 2 minutes left.
Yes, we have a program called Promoting Healthy Manhood, where we take our conference around the country and we work with men to help them to understand the trauma that they've experienced, because most men who are abusive have also been abused. And that's not to say that every man is. So this conference works with boys and men, and it's other boys and men who have been victims, who have been abusers, and who have healed and are helping to heal other men so that they can become our advocates to help prevent and end violence. If we're not engaging in the men, we cannot prevent violence.
Agreed. Candy Lewis, Executive Director of Positive Results Center, we thank you so much for your time this morning and your message and the work you are doing on behalf of women and this issue with domestic violence. And like you, we will continue to wear our purple, not just October, but throughout all the months, as this is an ongoing issue that we must continue to tackle. If you take a look at the bottom of your screen, if you are experiencing domestic violence of any kind, we encourage you to pick up the phone and call. I took a look at their website, and there's about a 15-minute delay because of the high volume, Ms. Lewis, of calls. And so they're asking you to hold on, and they're also routing you to local agencies that might help you as well. Again, we thank you so much, and we appreciate you, and welcome as a soulmate. We will definitely be calling on you again. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Wow, bravo to Miss Candy Lewis
indeed.
and the incredible work that she's doing. You know, I'm familiar with her work, particularly in Los Angeles, and it is really, really incredible work. And, you know, I think sometimes we forget that, you know, during the pandemic, you know, for folks that were experiencing intimate partner violence, for folks that were experiencing domestic violence,
Very
you know,
scary.
the pandemic made things worse because, you know, you couldn't really get away.
Yeah.
You know, you couldn't go to work, you know, or you know, get away from home long enough to be away from your abuser.
And when you talk about children, you know, most times, you know, children leave the home, they go to school, they're sitting in a desk, they're walking up the hallway. Administrators, educators can kind of eye that child if there's some sort of mark or bruising, or they just look disheveled. And when that lockdown came, it kept everybody isolated in the home, away. So you couldn't even really tap in to what may be happening, you know, to a child.
That's right.
That you would normally be able to do when they come to the classroom every day.
Yeah. And I was even reading that with the overturning of Roe v. Wade and with these restrictive, you know, abortion laws going into effect across the country, you know, that's actually having an effect in terms of empowering the abusers.
Yes.
Right? You know,
To use that as a way to manipulate.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so, you know, we need to make sure that we stay aware of the signs,
Yes.
The things to look for, as Ms. Lewis has outlined. And, you know, everybody should have that number saved on their phone, because you never know when you might need it, or
friend,
somebody you know
family
might
member.
need it. And so, you know, the National Domestic Violence Hotline number, you should Google that and save it to your phone.
Indeed. Speaking of abusers in Missouri, right?
Yeah, I mean, a really terrifying story. In Missouri, a 22-year-old black woman escaped a white man who abducted, tortured, and held her captive for weeks in a basement.
I mean, just a horrific story. According to The Guardian, the woman told police several other black women were killed by her captor less than a month after police dismissed community concerns about a serial killer as completely unfounded. The woman, who has not been named, escaped earlier this month after about a month in captivity, still wearing a metal collar locked with a padlock.
And that's the man.
That's him right there.
Right there. That's the man they think that did it.
Scary, creepy, all of the above. The authorities had to remove that chain and padlock. She told Kansas City police that 39-year-old Timothy Haslett, the guy you just saw there, had imprisoned her in a basement room.
And you know, it's been 40 years since the arrest of Wayne Williams, the man convicted of killing 20 children over a 2-year period.
I clearly remember that. Tonight, our Fox station in Atlanta is airing a special 1-hour report we call A Pattern of Killer. The Trail of Wayne Williams. Dale Russell gives us a preview.
We tracked down key players in the trial, a top prosecutor, Williams' attorney, the head of the Atlanta FBI, and Atlanta's Missing and Murdered Children's Task Force. We also talked to the homicide cop, who found the first of the crucial fiber evidence that helped lead to Williams' conviction. And finally, 3 jurors who explained what they saw and why they handed down a guilty verdict. You'll hear jurors' interesting interpretations of the key evidence, like the night Wayne Williams was spotted on the Jackson Parkway Bridge by a stakeout team, just as a loud splash was heard in the river. A body was found downstream 2 days later. Testimony made quite an impression on the jury.
He pulled up on the bridge and I guess opened the back of the station wagon, got the body out, threw it over the bridge, and then the police officer that was down at the bottom heard the splash.
And that time of night for someone to throw something over in that bridge, and I can say that just was not a well-traveled area, and it still isn't.
I could do this. I could pick him up and throw him over, and I know that Wayne could do it.
I remember that story.
Yikes.
It was huge. It was a scary time in Atlanta. There were questions as to his innocence or his guilt, or was he like this pawn? There were questions even after he was locked up. Were there still some activity still happening? It was huge, and it still is huge, obviously, because they go back and revisit what has happened, what has transpired. It's always interesting to see how those families have survived such a tragic incident.
Yeah, I mean, and there have been so many stories in the news, so many movies that have been featured, so many stories that have been told about these serial killers, right? And so if we're not talking about Jeffrey Dahmer, we're talking about this case in Atlanta, we're talking about, the black woman in Missouri held captive. It's important that folks pay attention to the signs so that we can do our best to avoid this really tragic news coming out of everywhere.
Absolutely.
Too many places.
Yeah. All right, you are watching.
Good evening. Here are your headlines for today.
A new study from the Pew Research Center reveals black voters will play a major role in the November midterms. Black voters are set to outpace Latino and Asian eligible voters by at least 11%. According to the data, the number of eligible black voters in the U.S. has only grown at a modest pace. However, black voters stand out because of high voter turnout rates. Clark Atlanta University students are working hard to get fellow students registered and informed for the midterm election.
As they should.
The Civic Engagement Initiative, CAU Vote, partnered with other on-campus organizations like frats and sororities, along with other local nonprofit organizations, to register over 500 students on National Voter Registration Day. Good job.
Bravo,
Yeah.
bravo. Georgia's youth voter turnout in 2020 was among the highest in the South, which helped turn the historically Republican state blue. Now, according to NBC News exit polls, young voters accounted for 20% of Georgia's votes, where 90% of young black voters helped elect President Joe Biden. Courtney?
After the first debate for Georgia's Senate seat on Friday night, Republican candidate Herschel Walker decided that wasn't.
It was enough.
That was
he had enough. Democratic Senator Raphael Warnock and Libertarian candidate Chase Oliver, they showed up to the Atlanta Press Club on Sunday while an empty podium represented Walker.
Despite being a no-show on Sunday, Walker's Friday debate performance still has the streets talking. For one, he flashed a badge to suggest that he was a part of the law enforcement community, despite the National Sheriff's Association saying that an honorary badge is, quote, for the trophy case. Walker, however, said that that's not true. On the issue of inflation, Walker raised eyebrows when responding to Warnock's remark that the Inflation Reduction Act capped insulin costs. He suggested that those worried about the high cost of the medicine should also eat right.
I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. Did you see that?
Yes, I did.
I saw that and I could not believe that Herschel Walker said to people that are struggling with diabetes, And for folks that have been fighting for so long to lower the cost of prescription drugs, specifically insulin, for him to say, not for that, you should just eat right. Come on now, Herschel, you know better. Here to discuss the poll and the significant role black women and men will play in the midterms is Richard Fowler, Fox News contributor. Welcome to the Black Report, Richard.
It's good to be with you, Courtney and Nicola. How are y'all?
We're good. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, and so, Higher Heights recently released this new poll. And in this poll, they cite some of the biggest concerns that black women are having with respect to the midterm elections. And surprisingly, one of the top issues, it wasn't abortion, it was pocketbook issues. It was the economy.
Yeah, how they're going to survive, how they're going to make ends meet.
Were you surprised at all by that, Richard?
No, not at all. I think we're seeing this happen all across the country, not just with black female voters, but with everybody, is that economy is now the #1 issue. And that has everything to do with the fact that, over the summer, we thought we were going to see a decrease in inflation, but inflation seems to be staying steady. And as you look at the Georgia race, and not only the Georgia race, but also in the Wisconsin race, as well as in Pennsylvania, inflation seems to be ruling the day, and economic kitchen table issues is going to be one thing that these voters take with them to the polls. And so in the closing days of these elections, what you're going to see both Democrats and Republicans do is they're going to try to make a very sharp immigration message. For Democrats, they're going to have to run on their record. For Republicans, because they don't have a very succinct plan besides saying the people in power are currently awful, they're going to have to figure out what their plan is for the American people.
All right, so with an overturning of Roe v. Wade, there's been no shortage of political pundits talking about how much the issue of abortion, access, and reproductive rights might animate women voters. But according to the Higher Heights study, it seems pocketbook issues are also that bigger motivator that we just spoke of. What do you make of it, and are these issues ultimately interconnected, would you say, Richard?
Listen, I don't think there's any voter that's going to the polls, Courtney, and saying, I'm only going to vote on this one issue, I'm only going to vote on that one issue. But it also depends on where they live. Remember, there is no president on this ballot, so there's no nationwide race. So if you are, for example, a voter in the state of Ohio, where we've seen a regression in access to women's health, that is a big issue for you. If you're in the state of Georgia, where they currently have the heartbeat bill, which is a bill that says at 6 weeks or before you have restrictions on your ability to get women's reproductive health care, then this is a marquee issue. If you live someplace else, for example, Pennsylvania, abortion's not at the top for you. But what you're also seeing happening, if you look at voter registration trends, if they're sort of a guise of anything, you're seeing right after the Dobbs decision earlier this summer, you saw a rush to voter registration by young women, which will likely be one of the indicators. Which is why we saw a bump in the poll numbers for Democrats in the summer. And now, as we come to the closing days of this election, you see many of these polls tightening. And I think in the segment before, we saw that this race will come down in many of these places to how black voters, the folks watching this show, the soulmates, how they turn out in this election. If we see an overwhelming turnout in places like Atlanta, in places like Philadelphia, in places like Milwaukee, then it will be a good night for Democrats. If turnout is depressed in these locations, then you can expect to see a really good night for Republicans.
And speaking of turnout, black women represent 53% of black eligible voters. But we know black folks in general may very well, to your point, represent the margin of victory in lots of races across the country. You've cited several of them. Talk to us a little bit about some of the work that you have observed. I know during Congressional Black Caucus, there was a convening that you were a part of, organized by Black Men Vote. You are very much attuned to the work that the sisters are doing to organize across the country, but also the work that the brothers are doing to organize across the country to be a part, not just be a part of the margin of victory, but be a decisive part of the margin of victory.
I think that's right. Look, I've interviewed both the Stacey Abrams campaign, and I'm literally finalizing a story that will run tomorrow in Forbes with the Mandela Barnes campaign. I spoke to both Mandela Barnes and Leader Abrams, and if you talk to both of them, their theory of the case is that we've got to expand the electorate. And I think, as Mandela Barnes put it, the lieutenant governor of Wisconsin said, you can't just assume that they're going to vote for you because you look like them. You have to go and you've got to make real connections with these voters. And if you talk to the Abrams campaign, what they will tell you is this: Black women voted in record numbers for Democrats, right? And where they're going to build capacity, right? Number two to Black women voting for the Democratic Party is Black men, right? So 1, 2 Black men, Black women, then Black men. But herein lies the problem, or here's maybe the solution, is a better way to put it, is can Stacey Abrams, can Mandela Barnes, can John Fetterman in Pennsylvania increase the share of Black men that turn out to vote? In this equation, if Stacey Abrams can do it, if Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes can do it in his Senate race, if they can increase the turnout of Black men in these races, that will be the decider, because that's where the most capacity exists in the Democratic Party, in the quote unquote Obama, now Biden, now I would say maybe the Stacey Abrams coalition. It's, can you increase the capacity amongst your Black male voters? Because for Black women voters, the capacity is almost at the roof. We've almost hit the ceiling. There are no more Black women voters out there to get. So you have to now go into the Black community, have a real conversation with Black men, make real connections with them, talk about the issues that impact them, like access to capital, access to education, and then say, here's my solutions to these problems, or here's what I will do when I get to Washington to fix these problems. And hopefully that will be enough to push these Black men out the polls and allow them to win this election.
Yeah, and that's all fine and dandy, but not too long ago, Courtney, we had a guest on that was talking about political violence.
Yes.
And the threat of political violence, and we certainly have seen in some of the January 6th testimony, we saw the Black poll workers, these 2 Black women, that still live under the threat of political violence, even after having served as poll workers in 2020. Let's talk about political violence and what role voter suppression coupled with political violence might play in terms of depressing Black voter turnout.
Look, I think that's right, and I think that's just the tip of the spear, right? If you really look at what's happening in Georgia, take Gwinnett County. Gwinnett County is a county just sort of east of the Atlanta metropolitan area. In Gwinnett County, thanks to the new voter law pushed forward by Brian Kemp, they have already sort of used their exact match law to challenge 37,000 voters, right? Basically saying these voters are not legitimate voters, and they're doing it en masse, not only in Gwinnett, but in other parts of the state. So just think about what that means. In a world in which Stacey Abrams only lost her election in 2018 by 50,000 votes, if the Republicans can get into Metro Atlanta, go to a number of those counties where, to your point, these electoral workers are already under threat of violence. A lot of folks don't want to go into electoral work because it's low pay, long hours. These offices now have to deal with the fact that there's 37,000, 40,000 challenges to voters. And to voter registration IDs and the voter registration records. That could be the ball game right there, which is how you get this voter suppression question, which is why I tell everybody, no matter who you are, no matter what party you belong to, before you go to the polls, vote early, right? And number 2, before you go to the polls, check your voter registration status. Make sure your voter registration is valid, and do that early enough so that you can fix any problems that you might have before you go out and vote in the polls. But more so than anything else, if we want to sort of fix the threat to the democracy, which is one of the top issues that voters are taking with them to the ballot box, outside of inflation, outside of reproductive health for women, outside of crime, that's the number 4 issue, then it's going to require us to be part of the democracy and to be an active player.
And speaking of fixing the democracy, I know this morning, Courtney, we were talking about the record number of Black women running for political office here in the United States.
Yeah, there's about over 500 Black women running for office in this midterm. The candidates who are running for office range from local, state, and federal levels. So, Richard, what races? I'm coming out of Georgia, just relocated to Michigan. So, of course, I'm looking at that Stacey Abrams situation. Any top races that we should really pay attention to as far as Black women candidates?
Oh, absolutely. The one that I'm really watching, and I'll be watching on election night, is the North Carolina race, where former Supreme Court Chief Justice Sherry Beasley is taking on Todd Budd down there. And listen, this race is very close. It's not a race that's gotten a lot of national attention because Georgia and Pennsylvania has taken up so much oxygen in the room. But you want to watch that one. The other one to watch is what happens in the LA mayor's race. LA is on to the trajectory to elect the first ever Black woman to lead the city. Former Congresswoman now Karen Bass, who will be a former Congresswoman. She's the new mayor of Los Angeles. So those are just two races that I'm watching. There's also a Senate race in Florida where Val Demings, the current Congresswoman and former police chief of Orlando, is taking on Marco Rubio. She's a little bit behind in the polls, but that will be a race to watch. And the other race I would tell folks to watch, because we've had this long sort of generational debate of who will be in control of the Senate. Why are our senators so old? The average age of the Senate right now is about 65, 64, and there's 53 senators over the age of 65. So watch what's happening in Wisconsin, where Mandela Barnes, if elected, would be the second millennial to join the body, even though millennials make up about 35% of America's workforce, and was one of the largest and most diverse generations in American history.
Yeah, sounds like an election night where we'll have to get that popcorn ready.
That's right.
I know that sounds a little interesting, but
that's right.
It's one of those elections.
And it wasn't too long ago that Georgia sent John Ossoff to the U.S. Senate. The first millennial, and so we just might have the second if Mandela Barnes.
That's right.
Is elected.
You're a genius, Richard. You're a genius. Thank you so much for the breakdown.
Our thanks to Richard Fowler, Fox News contributor, for joining us here on FOXSOUL's Black Report. Come back again soon, my friend.
Good to see y'all. Take care.
Indeed. And we will be right back, right? More FOXSOUL's Black Report.
No.
Oh, but first, former President Barack Obama is ready to flex on the campaign trail to encourage voters to hit the polls, especially in Georgia and right here in Michigan. 44 plans to visit key cities like Detroit at the end of the month to stump for some of the bigger names on the Michigan Democratic ticket. Obama's Detroit visit will come one day after a campaign event with U.S. Senator Raphael Warnock in Georgia. The exact time and location has not been announced.
And we'll be right back after this. You're watching. Hip-hop trailblazer Missy Elliott has been honored with a street named in her honor in her hometown of Portsmouth, Virginia, along with a key to the city.
Now, for those of you in the area, you know the portion of McLean Street was renamed Missy Elliott Boulevard earlier this year. The city will commemorate the occasion with a parade today. Nearby HBCUs, Norfolk State, Hampton, Virginia State, and Elizabeth City State will be there as well. Some of Virginia's finest, including artists Trey Songz, Timbaland, and Pusha T, are also scheduled to appear to celebrate. Big ups to Missy, as she's been hawing for a very long time. Just an innovator, an icon.
Ahead of her time.
Yeah.
And shout out to the Hampton Roads, my Hampton Roads family.
Okay.
I got family in Norfolk, in Virginia Beach, and I'm sure they're there if they can be there.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to celebrate. It's not a good workout unless you got at least one Missy Elliott song on your playlist.
Yeah. Plenty. I mean, but what for me? I mean, Missy Elliott is my people, my generation, so she is the playlist.
Yeah.
What are you saying?
That's right. That's right. And in more HBCU news, Andrea A. Hayes Dixon, Dr. Dixon, has been named the new dean of Howard University's College of Medicine. Dixon will make history as the first Black woman to lead the school. Isn't that amazing?
That is amazing. Absolutely amazing.
And what's also so great about that is, we don't see a lot of HBCU medical schools.
Right.
I think it was just announced recently that I think the first HBCU medical school in like almost 50 years was announced. I can't remember exactly where it will be built, but that's a big deal. I mean, we saw during the COVID pandemic.
Yeah.
How important it was for Black folks to be able to get information that they could trust from messengers that they could trust. And we know that Black doctors really make a big difference. And so it's great. It's good to see, more Black folks in leadership positions at some of our HBCU medical schools, and to see, this Black woman who has impeccable credentials at the helm. That is really something else.
Very exciting.
You know, today it was also announced that Kanye West, who has legally changed his name to Ye, is set to acquire Parler, the social media platform favored by those on the far right that prides itself on not censoring its users. Now, in a recent statement, Ye said, quotes, "In a world where conservative opinions are considered to be controversial, we have to make sure that we have the right to freely express ourselves." You might remember the rapper and fashion designer was frozen out of his accounts on Twitter and Instagram this month after making anti-Semitic comments on both platforms. Now, Ye's plans to buy Parler in a move that has been deemed by parent company Parliament Technologies as, quotes, taking a bold stance against his recent censorship from big tech.
Lots happening with Kanye.
Oh, he is just staying in the headlines,
So
right?
at what point is it, you know, this whole talk of mental illness versus, you know, this guy needs to be reprimanded, you know, for what he's out here saying and pushing as far as his rhetoric is concerned. There's now this big battle with George Floyd's family, as Kanye has suggested Floyd's death was a result of fentanyl and not the officer's knee on his neck. And as a result, they're looking at maybe filing suit. So at what point is it going to be, okay, Kanye is mentally ill versus he needs to shut his mouth? You know, what do you think? Yeah,
I mean, you know, Kanye stays in the headlines and for what feels like all the wrong reasons.
Yeah, I'm really over it. But if we need to address that something is wrong and somebody needs to, in his camp, snatch him up and get him some help.
I just think, to your earlier point, I don't think we talk enough about the mental health piece, right? And, you know, I'm not speaking out of turn. Kanye, Ye, has said publicly, you know, that, you know, he struggles with, you know, bipolar disorder and mental illness. You know, I think it's dangerous. I think it's dangerous for, you know, somebody to take control of a social media platform, for somebody to take control of such a large communications channel, you know, and you know, that coupled with displaying erratic behavior and saying all sorts of things, insulting all sorts of different groups of people, whether we're talking about the anti-Semitic comments that were directed to the Jewish community, or we talk about the deeply hurtful comments directed to the George Floyd family. You know, he has been erratic for a long time, and if he wasn't Ye West, I think he would be more accountable for what he says out loud.
He's always been a musical genius, in my opinion, very eccentric. I did radio and television in Chicago for 12 years, knew him in his infancy as far as, you know, music is concerned. And I just think somebody needs to snatch him again, throw him back on the south side of the Chi in his element, and maybe some actual treatment. And you know, hopefully, you know, we can start some healing. And you know, even if he does feel like this outside of his issues being addressed, that's okay. But we just have to make sure this filter is not being exacerbated by this mental illness, if you will. Yeah,
and you know, we haven't even scratched the surface in terms of talking about his relationship with Donald Trump, his relationship with Candace, you know, folks on the far right, you know, him playing footsie essentially with the MAGA Republican crowd. I mean, there's a reason why, like, this site, Parler, there's a reason why, you know, it has been associated with the January 6th insurrectionists, right? The insurrectionists were using sites like Parler to communicate, right? And so this isn't just sort of, you know, an innocent purchase of a social media platform. This is a social media platform that has been misused.
Well, what he doesn't want to
peddle
lose
misinformation
is our support, who made him who he is. That's what he doesn't want to lose. So
and Ye has an open invitation to join us right here on Fox Soul's Black Report to talk any of this out. More on Fox Soul's Black Report when we return.
All right, we are back. Fox Soul's Black Report. And last night, the NFL saw its first game this season where two black coaches.
Count them.
2.
1, 2.
That's right. Went head to head on the field. The Steelers' Mike Tomlin and the Bucs' Todd Bowles faced off for the first time.
That's right. The league currently has 4 black coaches, including Steve Wilkes of the Carolina Panthers on an interim basis and Lovie Smith of the Houston Texans.
Did you watch the game last night?
I missed the game. I was in flight.
I was being real funny because you don't watch no football. I did. So the score was 18-20.
You watched enough for both of us.
Yeah, that's right. That's
Yes.
what I'm saying. The score was like 18-20, and like what was so amazing about this is that Mike Tomlin and his Steelers dominated the Bucs and Tom Brady. And let me tell you, Tom Brady was seen cussing his team out on the sideline.
Well, he has a lot of pent-up frustration.
I know
Tom Brady's going through
right.
some things right now.
They didn't score any points in the first half, and he got sacked 2 times, which is, very, very, not for Tom Brady to get sacked. Are you kidding me? So
The
yeah,
brother's got a lot on his mind.
Yeah.
Got a lot on his mind.
All right, moving on. Soulmates, let's keep former NBA center Dikembe Mutombo in our thoughts. At this time, the Basketball Hall of Famer has been diagnosed with a brain tumor and currently is undergoing treatment in Atlanta.
That's right. According to reports, his family says that he's in great spirits, and so we like to hear that.
That's good.
While they do ask for privacy at this time, they mention in a statement that they're grateful for good wishes and prayers, and so we have an NBA legend that is really keeping a positive attitude, and this comes as a big surprise because he was just in his native of the Congo with Secretary Blinken in August.
He's a huge humanitarian.
Yeah, and he seemed to be fine, and he was there, connecting the dots between U.S. foreign policy and humanitarian aid and investment. Yeah. Investment in the Congo, and so
I used to have a producer, and they were good friends, and he would call her and he would say, "Lisa, I'm looking for you, Lisa." Great sense of humor, and so I'm hoping the best for him for sure.
Yes, we're praying for him here at FOXSOUL's Black Report. And another NBA legend, this one a legend in the making,
That's
LeBron
right.
James is getting to the bag.
Ooh.
He's getting to the bag. He's getting his bag as he sets to
bags.
become a bag for all of us, and then some, to become the highest paid player ever in NBA history.
So the NBA star took the top spot on Forbes' list of the highest paid NBA players, coming in at an estimated $124.5 million, nearly $30 million ahead of everyone else. Off-court deals have helped to boost that total, which made him the first active player to become a billionaire and only the second NBA player in history after Michael Jordan. And listen, I was reading Fan Nation, and they were saying, oh no, he's like the top paid athlete in the world, the world. So LeBron's legacy is beginning to build his wealth by signing an endorsement deal with Nike. Bronny James, along with 4 other athletes, have granted their names, image, and likeness to the sports apparel company. You might remember Daddy LeBron doing the same thing before being drafted to the NBA. Now, in a recent interview, Bronny said, quote, "For as long as I can remember, Nike's been a part of my family, and getting a chance to team up with them and continue my family's legacy both on the court and in the community is wild. It really means a lot to me." That is special.
I mean, what a powerful demonstration of what's possible. I mean, LeBron has really left his imprint on the NBA. He's really sort of changed the sport. Right. He is quite the businessman. I mean, to be an active player and to be billionaire status already. Yeah. Just imagine where he'll be, even a few years from now. And so, and did you know this? I didn't know this, that LeBron James is part owner of a major league pickleball team.
Right.
I didn't know that pickleball was that serious.
It's huge. They say in a minute pickleball might make the Olympics. That's how big the pickup is with this pickleball. And with his investment, you best believe we'll be seeing more of pickleball. Now, I like pickles, but I don't know nothing about what pickleball is. I think it's like tabletop, like the ping pong.
One of my best friends, his dad plays pickleball in Florida. And so I'm going to have to get like a real quick pickleball tutorial.
What is that all about?
Right?
Yeah.
I'll tutor him in spades and he'll tutor me in pickleball.
So this guy is leaving his opponents in a pickle. You like that? Primetime Deion Sanders continues his standout legacy in football as the 55-year-old takes on a new role as head coach of Jackson State University.
That's right. This is an opportunity. This opportunity is important to Coach Sanders, not just because of the salary, but because of the impact his presence can make on the players and historically black colleges and universities at large. In his 60-minute interview last night, which was really good, I really enjoyed it, the Pro Football Hall of Famer explained that he felt it was a divine calling. He said, quotes, "I truly believe with all my heart and soul that God called me collect." He laughed and he said, "I had to accept the charges," right? I mean, always a sense of humor. That was an incredible interview. I mean, you know, the past several weeks, you know, we haven't heard the best news coming out of Jackson, Mississippi.
Yeah, and I think we've got some sound on that. Let's check it out.
Because we were right there neck to neck with Alabama, and we broke. So what if? What if? And I'm hoping a political figure of someone, some billionaire out there saying, you know what, I'm gonna bet on Prime, man. Let me go help that program. Because I just wanna see what it would be like if he had the resources these other schools would have.
I really feel like there's some maybe, and this, I don't know if this is far-fetched, but I'm feeling like a lot of envy. You know, when it comes from maybe from other HBCUs programs who want the same attention, who need the same money, who need the same focus. I mean, not everybody's going to find a Deion Sanders to come and coach, but that's where my concern comes in. I really want all of these HBCU football programs to really make it and survive and you know, not hating on Jackson State. They're going to get theirs while they have prime time there. But what about the others? And I think it's kind of creating maybe a little bit of envy amongst the coaches who don't have these kind of resources.
But you know what? I actually think this is the beginning of a movement, right? Of you know, football Hall of Famers, people that have that kind of Deion Sanders status and stature, you know, going back to support our historically black colleges and universities with their time, with their talent, and in some cases with their treasure. And so, you know, clearly from that 60 Minutes interview, Deion Sanders has given Jackson State all he has while he can. And, you know, he's older, you know, he doesn't move the same, but he is clearly committed to giving the students of Jackson State, the student athletes of Jackson State, everything he has.
All righty, we're going to chat it up about Tyler Perry when we come back right here on Fox Soul's Black Report. College courses have changed a lot over the years.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, I've been out of college for like 30 years, so I'm sure they've changed. It's been empowering to watch modern black leaders be studied, trailblazers like entertainment mogul Tyler Perry.
That's right. This fall, 14 freshmen at Oxford College in Georgia will analyze Tyler Perry's notable speeches and movies and TV shows juxtaposed against black authors like Zora Neale Hurston and Paul Laurence Dunbar and so many others, including Ntozake Shange. You remember, you know, for Color Girls. She's author for Color Girls.
Yeah. An assistant professor of English and creative writing created the course in the language of folk and kin, the legacy of folklore and community in the artistic practices of Tyler Perry. Now, to note, the university is less than an hour from Tyler Perry Studio. So Oxford is under the umbrella of Emory, and that's not too far from the Tyler Perry Studio. So just a nice little caveat to that.
I mean, it's so important for us to be able to celebrate black excellence and for us to be able to have some of our trailblazers in the history books and in college classrooms where students can interrogate, you know, their contribution to the canon of work in entertainment and so forth.
So as you reach your peak and people are studying Dr. Nicolai Cortez.
As they are studying the Courtney Hicks.
No, the doctor. So what is it that you would hope to have accomplished if there were a classroom of students studying your body of work? For me, it's just a good daughter, a good friend, a good sister, you know, a good wife, and a good all-around humanitarian.
I think those are great things. Those are great things. I think anybody would want that to be a part of their legacy. But I think, you know, also for me, you know, being a change maker, but also getting to report on the change makers that are among us in a time such as this. And so one day, if I could ever be so lucky, that's a part of the contribution I hope to offer.
4-point course, 3-point course,
4-point.
4-point course.
Don't play me small.
Four credits. 4 credits.
A whole 4.
I know. Okay. Big news for the Big Three. The first of its kind league is officially registered as a Black-owned and operated business by Black Network and the U.S. Black Chambers Incorporated. The move for the league, founded by iconic rapper and actor Ice Cube, makes it the first and only professional sports league to be certified by the Buy Black Network.
You know, Cube was quoted saying, quotes, "From day one, the league has been dedicated to providing opportunities for Black players, fans, investors, and partners, and we're proud to be a part of a nationwide network of Black business owners." Yeah,
I kind of sort of remember the whole climb, if you will, of the Big Three and the naysayers and, oh, you're not gonna. And then Q put this thing together with his team, and it has blown up. And it's really, it reminds me of the whole And One phenomenon, how people kind of doubted that thing, you know, because it was all about Nike at the time. And One put something together that was just so connected to the people. And I think that is why Ice Cube and his folks have been so successful with the Big Three. And then you're pulling out some faves who, you know, may have had their time in the NBA, it got cut short for whatever reason, and to see those guys kind of, you know, be back on the court prospering and really doing their thing, it's really exciting to see.
It's very exciting, and
make some money.
It's also another example of sort of a Black renaissance that's afoot in our country, where we're seeing a number of Black entrepreneurs really scaling up their businesses and, you know, really entering into industries that were previously sort of off limits, right? And so, you know, not only do we see artifacts like the Tina Turner doll created, talk about how representation matters, you know, but we're seeing more money in the pockets, you know, of the folks whose likeness and image that is. We're seeing more money in the pockets, you know, of Black businesses across the country. And so, you know, Ice Cube, you know, that's the latest example. We talked earlier about LeBron James and how he's just as savvy in the boardroom as he is on the basketball court. And so that's incredible to see. And even Serena Williams, she says, you know, she's not retiring from tennis necessarily, but she's sort of recreating, reimagining her, you know, her future and what positive examples of what's possible.
But speaking of the Tina Turner doll, honey, that it is getting rave reviews. It looks great. It is on point. And just what an iconic message you're sending to young Black girls in particular, that you can come from, she has a, you know, there's a domestic violence story from coming up under, you know, someone who was very oppressive, and, you know, and she walked away and she just wanted her name. And as you know, navigate through that career, there's been plenty of books, and you've got the music and the movies, and, you know, a Barbie doll for American, that's a big feat.
It is a big feat.
You know, to be encompassed that way, embodied rather that way. And it's a great doll. Yeah. And folks are looking, especially the collectors, they're going nuts over it, and it's getting rave reviews. It's going to probably more than likely be a hot Christmas item too.
I think it might be. I mean, any Tina Turner anything is going to be a sure enough hot Christmas item, hot birthday item. But I mean, just, you know, hats off to you know these Black entrepreneurs doing their thing, right? I mean, you know, Tina Turner didn't become the Tina Turner that my generation knew until she was after 40 years old, right? She was over 40 when she became, you know, sort of the icon that we celebrate. You know, you look at folks like Rihanna, you know, who has achieved billionaire status as young as she is, you know, not just because of her music and because of, you know, some of the social stances that she's taken, but being an entrepreneur. Fenty Beauty is a big part of what has catapulted her to billionaire status. You look at, Beyonce and Jay-Z, right? And how their resources combined, I think, have them just at billionaire status, if not a little bit over. And so, so many examples of entertainers that have learned from the stories of entertainers of the past. I was going to
say, that's a great tie-in. We're talking about Tina Turner, who absolutely paved the way for some of the artists and more that you just mentioned. So it's just a great tie-in, whether it's Dion and what he was able to accomplish for folks like a LeBron James to kick the door open even wider, if you will. So it's synergy, all of that good synergy.
It's synergy, and as Beyonce would say, energy. You like that track?
I like that track.
Energy. Yeah. I mean, this is just what a time to be alive. And I think sometimes when we report on some of the tragedies that are happening, sometimes we forget about some of the Black brilliance and Black excellence that is afoot in industries that, again, had previously been walled off to our people. And so this is an exciting time.
It is an exciting time in the arts, in politics. Right now, we're talking Black excellence, in sports, in science and tech. So it's a lot to keep our eye on, and that's our job, that's our mission, that's our goal here at FOXSOUL's Black Report.
Every week we file FOXSOUL's Black Report. That's exactly why we're here.
Yeah.
Yes. Our thanks to all of you for joining us. I'm Dr. Nicordelai Corte.
Oh, so it's to doctor today. I'm not Dr. Courtney Hicks.
Stay lifted, everybody.
Oh, so you're a doctor. You better give it to him.